They were built for one purpose: speed, reliability, and victory. The American Jeep, a machine that symbolized Allied power, engineering simplicity, and the ability to go anywhere war demanded. But in the chaos of World War II, even symbols of freedom could fall into enemy hands, and when they did, the enemy learned fast. This is the untold story of how Wehrmacht mechanics stranded on the collapsing fronts of Europe captured, rebuilt, and repurposed American Jeeps to fight back against the very soldiers who built them. It's a tale of ingenuity, desperation, and a strange twist of wartime irony, when the tools of liberation became the weapons of resistance. In the spring of 1943, Allied forces pushed deep into North Africa. The terrain was brutal, blistering heat, endless sand, and supply lines stretched thin. American forces relied heavily on their Willys MB and Ford GPW Jeeps, light, agile, and perfect for desert operations. But as with every war machine, once it rolled into battle, it risked capture, and the Germans were watching closely. During the North African campaign, the Afrika Korps, under the command of Erwin Rommel, encountered hundreds of Allied vehicles abandoned after ambushes, air raids, or fuel shortages. Among them were several intact American Jeeps, a machine unlike anything the Germans had built. To German eyes, the Jeep was strange. No armor, no real protection, yet it could glide across terrain that left heavier trucks stuck, and that intrigued them. In a makeshift repair depot behind the front lines, a small group of Wehrmacht mechanics began to tinker with 3 captured Jeeps. They were dusty, bullet-scarred, but mechanically sound. The Germans studied their design: the compact 4-cylinder engine, the short wheelbase, the simple gearbox. One mechanic reportedly said it was the most practical vehicle he had ever seen. Unlike the German Kübelwagen, the Jeep could handle deep mud, rocky slopes, and narrow ravines. The Kübelwagen was reliable on flat terrain, but it was light, with poor ground clearance. The Jeep was heavier, more rugged, and could take punishment. The Germans quickly realized that in certain conditions, this little American machine might actually outperform their own. Orders came from local command: rebuild them, repaint them, and use them. The mechanics stripped off the old olive drab paint and replaced it with desert yellow and gray camouflage. American markings were scrubbed off, replaced by black crosses and Wehrmacht unit symbols. They even painted fake damage on the fenders to disguise them further so Allied pilots wouldn't easily recognize them from the air. The captured Jeeps were soon seen darting across the desert, carrying German officers, dispatch riders, and sometimes special reconnaissance units. Their engines roared with a sound unmistakably American, yet the men behind the wheel wore gray uniforms. What made this strange conversion even more remarkable was how the Germans adapted them with whatever they had. Some of the Jeeps were modified with spare MG-34 machine gun mounts, others fitted with jerry cans, extra radio equipment, and even altered gear ratios. German craftsmanship met American simplicity, a fusion born not from choice, but necessity. The Allies were puzzled when they first began hearing reports of Jeeps being used by the enemy. At first, they thought it was confusion, that Allied patrols had misidentified vehicles in the dust of combat. But then, unmistakable photos began to surface. German soldiers in desert gear, sitting proudly in captured Jeeps, smiling for the camera as if mocking the very army that built them. Behind these captured vehicles was a story deeper than just military opportunism. It was about resourcefulness. By 1943, German logistics were breaking down. Fuel, spare parts, and trucks were all in short supply. The North African front was collapsing, and the Wehrmacht was forced to scavenge whatever they could find. The Jeep, in its mechanical brilliance, offered a lifeline. To the mechanics, these vehicles weren't trophies, they were survival. They stripped American rations, ammunition boxes, and fuel cans from the wreckage of abandoned convoys. Each piece was reused, reshaped, repainted. A German officer wrote in his diary that the captured Jeeps were like desert camels. They carried us farther than any German machine could. Yet, there was something ironic about it all. The Jeep, a vehicle designed to unite Allied armies and bring them victory, was now being used to outmaneuver them in small, sharp desert skirmishes. Every time an American patrol spotted a jeep approaching in the distance, they couldn't be sure whether it was friend or foe. That hesitation, that split second of uncertainty sometimes proved fatal. As the months went on, more jeeps fell into enemy hands in North Africa, in Sicily, in Italy. German engineers began to collect notes, sketches, and measurements. They admired its design but struggled to replicate it under wartime production limits. The Jeep wasn't just a machine, it was a symbol of what the Germans had failed to produce. A lightweight, versatile, mass-produced vehicle that could thrive in any environment. When the North African campaign ended in May 1943, the Afrika Korps was defeated. But some of those captured Jeeps survived, transported by the Germans into Europe, used by reconnaissance and command units in Italy, and even in the Balkans. In those muddy, broken terrains, their usefulness continued. In the ruins of captured towns, Allied soldiers sometimes found the twisted remnants of what once had been American vehicles, now burned, shot up, their bodies painted in German colors. A few were even booby-trapped, left behind by retreating Wehrmacht units to explode if touched. The Jeep had come full circle, from tool of liberation to trap of war. And yet, this strange chapter of history where mechanics turned captured enemy technology into their own was far from unique. Throughout the war, both sides scavenged, repurposed, and reused everything they could find. Tanks, trucks, even aircraft. But the story of those 3 Jeeps rebuilt by Wehrmacht mechanics remains one of the most fascinating, a small but telling glimpse into the desperation, adaptability, and irony of a world at war. Because in those final years, it wasn't about who built the best machines, it was about who could keep them running the longest. As the war dragged into 1,944, those 3 captured Jeeps had become small legends among the German units that used them. Each one bore scars from battle, bullet holes patched with thin sheets of scrap metal, cracked windshields replaced with pieces of aircraft canopy, and tires scavenged from wrecked convoys. Yet, they kept running. They were maintained by a handful of resourceful mechanics who treated them like prized possessions machines that didn't just move men, but symbolized defiance in a war that was beginning to turn against them. In occupied Italy, one of these Jeeps was assigned to a reconnaissance unit operating in the Apennine Mountains. The terrain there was brutal, narrow passes, steep roads, and constant ambushes. The German Kübelwagens struggled on the muddy inclines, while heavy trucks simply couldn't make the climb. But the American Jeep, reborn under the black cross of the Wehrmacht, could glide effortlessly through it. Soldiers called it Der Kleine Teufel, the Little Devil. It darted along roads the Allies never expected the enemy to use, often slipping behind their lines for short bursts before vanishing again into the hills. The mechanics had done more than just repair these vehicles, they had adapted them. One Jeep had its seats removed and replaced with extra fuel tanks hidden under the rear cover. Another had a frame-mounted MG-34 fitted near the passenger side, though it was rarely used. A third was modified for radio communications fitted with a captured Allied radio set, giving it the ability to listen in on enemy chatter. It was a silent, moving spy. It's easy to overlook how remarkable this was. Wartime vehicles were often dependent on specific fuel types, spare parts, and maintenance tools. Mixing enemy technology was usually impossible. But these German teams were improvising with whatever they had, merging American engineering with German know-how, using pieces scavenged from wrecked tanks, aircraft, and even civilian vehicles. One mechanic, interviewed years later after the war, said, "We were no longer soldiers, we were survivors." The Jeep was our best weapon, not because it fired bullets, but because it kept us alive. In northern France, after D-Day, other captured Jeeps fell into German hands. Some were abandoned by Allied paratroopers, others taken during chaotic night battles. The Germans repainted them, fitted fake US stars on the hood, and used them in infiltration missions, a tactic that played a terrifying psychological game on the battlefield. Imagine a foggy dawn in Normandy, an American soldier spotting a Jeep approaching, headlights dim, familiar silhouette rolling across a hedgerow lane. The natural instinct would be to wave it through. But as it passed, a burst of gunfire erupted from within. These were not ordinary soldiers, they were German commando units, trained in deception. Dressed in captured Allied uniforms, they used these vehicles to spread confusion, sabotage communication lines, and attack supply convoys. Operation Greif, led by Otto Skorzeny later in the Ardennes, would famously use this tactic on a larger scale. Though those jeeps were not from the original trio, they followed the same logic. Use the enemy's machine to blend in, then strike without warning. Yet, not every story of the captured jeeps was drenched in violence. Some were used for the most ordinary, almost human reasons. One was converted into an ambulance, painted with a red cross, and used by a small German medical detachment in Italy. The mechanics had repurposed wooden boards to make a stretcher frame mounted to the back of the jeep with ropes and steel rods. Under enemy fire, this improvised ambulance carried wounded men through terrain where no truck could pass. It became a ghostly sight, a small American-built machine, rescuing German soldiers in a war that showed no mercy. When Allied troops later recaptured the area, they were stunned to find their own jeeps bearing German field markings, medical insignias, and even handwritten notes in German under the hood. 1US. Mechanic reportedly stared at the vehicle in disbelief, saying, "Hell, they even changed the spark plugs with something we don't have." These stories highlight one truth about war. Ingenuity doesn't belong to one side. It belongs to those who refuse to give up. The Wehrmacht's use of captured equipment wasn't a matter of pride, it was a matter of survival. By late 1944, German industry was collapsing under Allied bombing. Factories were gone, railways shattered, and spare parts almost non-existent. Every functional vehicle, no matter where it came from, was a lifeline. It wasn't just jeeps, either. The Germans captured and reused everything they could. Sherman tanks, British Bren carriers, Soviet T-34 seconds, even American half-tracks. They rebranded them with German insignia and squeezed every last mile out of their engines. But the Jeep stood apart, its simplicity made it easy to repair, its adaptability made it invaluable. Historians estimate that several hundred Allied vehicles were pressed into German service by the end of the war, though only a few dozen were ever combat-ready. Most were used for logistics, command, transport, or reconnaissance. But among all of them, the small fleet of captured jeeps became a curious fascination among Allied intelligence officers. Reports circulated describing enemy light vehicles of American type bearing Axis markings. It became both a mystery and a warning: don't assume friend from foe too quickly. In one recorded incident near Cassino, an Allied patrol was ambushed by what they believed to be friendly troops after seeing an approaching jeep waving a white flag. The attackers opened fire, vanishing into the mist moments later. When the jeep was later found abandoned, its hood still bore faint outlines of the American star, carefully painted over by German gray. And yet, these small mechanical conversions carried an unintended message about respect. For all the propaganda on both sides, there was a mutual recognition of engineering excellence. German officers openly admired the Jeep's brilliance, how it could be repaired in the field with basic tools, how it survived abuse that would destroy most vehicles. Some even called it the most democratic machine ever built, a phrase that, ironically, came from a man serving under one of history's most brutal dictatorships. There's a strange poetry in that in a war driven by ideology, the machines themselves didn't care. They served whoever could keep them alive. As Germany's fronts crumbled, the remaining jeeps were driven through retreat after retreat from the Italian hillsides to the forests of Austria. Some were destroyed to avoid capture, others simply broke down and were left behind. A few fell back into Allied hands, sometimes barely recognizable under layers of grime and mismatched paint. When Allied engineers examined them, they marveled at how the Germans had managed to keep them running for so long without proper parts. One report noted that a Jeep engine had been rebuilt with a mixture of American pistons, German valves, and even a French carburetor. It was mechanical Frankenstein, yet it worked. Every dent, every scar told a story of hands that refused to stop turning wrenches even as their world burned around them. Those three original Jeeps, the ones first captured in North Africa, eventually disappeared into the ruins of history. No records tell us their exact fate. Perhaps they broke down in the mud of Italy, or were destroyed in retreat, or maybe, by some twist of luck, one survived, parked in a forgotten barn somewhere in Europe, rusted but intact. But even if they didn't survive, their story did. A story of machines turned against their makers, of soldiers who found ingenuity in desperation, and of how even the smallest vehicle can carry the weight of history. And yet, there's still more, because in the final months of the war, as the Allies closed in from every side, the Germans used those same captured jeeps for one last mission. A desperate, dangerous act that blurred the line between survival and surrender. By the beginning of 1945, the Third Reich was collapsing from within. Cities were in ruins, fuel was gone, and the once mighty Wehrmacht was retreating on every front. Yet among the chaos, a few machines still rolled, coughing, rattling, but somehow alive. Among them were the captured jeeps, their olive paint buried under months of grime, their once proud bodies now scarred by war. One of them, believed to be from the original trio, rebuilt in North Africa, had made its way across Italy, into Austria, then south again toward Bavaria. It was driven not by elite officers or spies, but by a small group of Wehrmacht mechanics who refused to abandon it. They had rebuilt it twice, maybe 3 times, cannibalizing parts from wrecked trucks and motorcycles just to keep it moving. It carried tools, spare tires, and a wooden crate marked benzene, though the fuel inside was mixed with alcohol and anything else that would burn. By now, these men knew the war was lost. Their orders were meaningless, their units scattered. But they drove that little jeep through bombed-out villages and frozen valleys, looking not for victory, but escape. It had become more than a vehicle. It was their last chance to reach home. At night, they kept its lights off, rolling silently along dark roads, the engine barely whispering. The irony wasn't lost on them, German soldiers fleeing through their own land in an American machine. Some might have laughed if not for the fear that followed every mile. In one village near Salzburg, witnesses later recalled seeing such a jeep passing through just before dawn, no markings visible, only the faint shadow of a black cross under the dust. It stopped briefly near a farmhouse where a woman offered the soldiers bread and water. When she asked where they were going, one of them reportedly answered softly, "Home, wherever that is now." Not long after, Allied units entered the same village. They found the jeep abandoned by the side of the road, its tires flat, its engine cold. Inside was a single Wehrmacht cap, a broken wrench, and an empty map case. No one ever discovered what happened to the men who drove it. The other 2 captured jeeps met similar fates. One was destroyed near the Brenner Pass after a fuel truck explosion. The other was seized by American troops outside Milan, its hood still bearing faint traces of German paint. The U.S. Soldiers, curious and amused, cleaned it up and drove it back into service, the jeep returning full circle to its original army. In a war of grand machines, tanks, bombers, battleships, it's easy to overlook these small stories, but sometimes it's the smallest machines that carry the greatest weight. The Jeep was never designed for glory. It wasn't armored, it wasn't fast, and it wasn't elegant. Yet it became the backbone of mobility for both sides, in different ways. The Wehrmacht mechanics who rebuilt those 3 Jeeps weren't heroes nor villains. They were survivors in a collapsing world. Men whose skill and determination allowed a handful of vehicles to defy the odds. In a war defined by ideology, propaganda, and destruction, these mechanics represented something simpler, the human instinct to adapt, to keep moving, even when everything else is falling apart.